Good evening and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story this hour. Big news coming in. 2 people have been seriously injured in a knife attack in Paris near the former offices of Charlie Hebdo, where the 2015 attack took place. 2 suspects have been arrested. A counter-terrorism investigation has been launched in France. The stabbing came as a trial is currently underway in the capital for the alleged accomplices of the authors of the January 2015 attack on Charlie Hebdo. 12 people, including some of France's most celebrated cartoonists, were killed in the attack by brothers Saïd and Cherif Kouachi and was claimed by a branch of Al-Qaeda. It is unclear what motivated the attack. However, Charlie Hebdo has moved from its previous address on the Rue Nicolas Appert since 2015 by the Islamist extremists. Now, a security cordon has been set up in the 11th arrondissement in eastern Paris, and the public have been told to avoid the area. And Michael Kay, investigative journalist and former RAF pilot, joins us live from Paris for more on this. Good evening to you, Michael. Thank you for being with us. Now, I'd like to start with tweets where you warned that something like this could happen, and I will quote this tweet of yours, which was 2 weeks ago, where you said, keeping a careful eye here in Paris. Paris is the home of the Charlie Hebdo. You also said, I was expecting this. Not only is the trial currently underway of the Hebdo attackers from January 2015, but Charlie Hebdo recently published more cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad.
Yeah, so that's absolutely right. About 2 weeks ago, so around September the 11th, Al-Qaeda on the Arabian Peninsula published a message basically encouraging attacks on Charlie Hebdo staff. And the reason for that, I think, was twofold. The first one was that there is the trial going on of the 14 suspects involved in the January 2015 attacks on Charlie Hebdo, which resulted in many fatalities and injuries. But then also recently, on the 7th of September, the satirical magazine based out of Paris in France decided to republish cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, which obviously was, obviously is, a very, very sensitive subject when it comes to Islam, and particularly those that are involved in political Islam and those that are involved in jihad. So the question sort of rises really in terms of this continuous debate that we have on the First Amendment, as the US call it, or the freedom of press and the freedom of speech, versus the consequences of freedom of speech and knowing potentially what the consequences of that might be. And it's also worth noting at this point that a couple of days ago, the Eiffel Tower was also evacuated due to a bomb threat. There were no motives for that. There was no known reason for that. But again, it is over the period since the commencement of this trial, which has 14 suspects of the 2015 attack in January in Paris.
Right. Now, the trial is underway for the original attack. There have been 2 arrests, and a counter-terror investigation has been launched. What is the update on the same? Has any group claimed this attack?
No group has actually claimed the Charlie Hebdo attack, as far as I'm aware. And it's taken 5 years to actually bring the culprits to trial. There were rumors that the Islamic State were involved, but whenever the Islamic State claims something, it's very important that we don't just immediately attribute the motive and the blame to the Islamic State, because obviously that gives them kudos. There has to be some form of investigation to prove links to whether the group or the perpetrators of the January 15 attacks were and how were they linked in some way to Islamic State, if indeed that was the case. So, for example, were some of these characters out in Syria training with some of the organization? Were there communications that have been intercepted or that have been found in the group's homes after the groups were arrested and the rooms were effectively gone through with a fine-tooth comb? Was there any evidence to link that? And as far as I'm aware, there isn't any evidence really to link those two as yet. But I'm sure, this quite long and enduring trial that's occurring at the moment will uncover at least some of that evidence that security authorities in Paris have found.
Right, Michael, you did mention it earlier. On the anniversary of the attack, the Charlie Hebdo again republished the same pictures of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, France said at that time that this was actually a part of history now and that France is secular.
Right, and I think, France is one of those countries that really does adhere to, the freedom of speech and the freedom of protest. We've, libertaire, which is part of their slogan, is the freedom to protest, the freedom of speech, the freedom of worship. That is enshrined within the French Constitution and French society. So, the French don't like being told when they're operating inside their own country and they're operating under the laws of their constitution that the freedom of speech and freedom of press is enshrined in. They don't like being told what to do because, it's not, they say it's not a personal thing against Islam. They literally go after anyone that they feel is worthy of their satire.
Right, Michael, thank you very much for joining us for all the latest and for bringing us that detailed analysis there.